Secret Mom Hacks, episode number 45. My name is Krista, and I'm your host. It's December 13th, 2023, and I don't know about you, but this holiday season is just sailing by for me. It seems like Halloween was last week, like Thanksgiving was yesterday, and as of today, we're 12 days away from Christmas Day. I feel like I'm going to blink, and it's going to be here. And as much as I love summer and I'm very much a warm weather person, really not a fan of cold weather, I absolutely love the Christmas season and all that comes with it, the baking, the decorating, the endless hours of Hallmark Christmas movies, and watching The Grinch with my daughter at least 10 or 12 times. This time of year is when so many great memories are made. Those core memories from childhood that we look back on, hopefully with smiles on our faces. Wherever you are on your parenting journey, let this be a gentle reminder for all of us to slow down as much as we can and embrace all of the sweet moments with our little ones. They just grow up too fast. Well, in this week's episode, I am excited to have my new friend, Lo, joining us. She is a mom, a doula, childbirth educator, IBCLC, which stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. And she is also a podcaster. You can find her show, The Milk Making Minutes, wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, she started her podcast to empower and explore baby feeding struggles and triumphs, which, if you've been around here for a while, you know I struggled and triumphed with my breastfeeding journey. Well, not only is Lo sharing her wisdom and insight on today's episode, she was kind enough to feature me on episode 153 of her podcast. So please go check that out when you can. Now, we cover a lot in our chat. If you're a breastfeeding mom or know someone who is, get ready to take some notes because Lo shares some incredibly valuable insight you will not want to miss. In fact, we covered so much. I'm releasing only half of our interview today, and you will have to come back next week for part 2, okay? All right, well, we're about to hop into our chat, but before we do, I just want to say thanks for tuning in, Mama. I started this podcast because babies don't come with instructions. As of this recording, I am chasing around a 5-year-old that no amount of Googling, mom groups, or books were able to prepare me for. There's a lot of stuff people don't talk about when it comes to pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, postpartum, and so on. And as someone who was previously terrified of all of the above, I'm here to help you pull back the curtain on all of it. And every now and then, it may get a little messy. We may share a little TMI, but that's why you're here, right? My goal is you'll leave every episode feeling refreshed, inspired, and hopeful, knowing you are not on this mom journey alone. Now, there's a lot of subject matter to cover when it comes to mom life, and we are covering it all. Now, let's talk with Lo Nigrosh, host of the Milk Making Minutes podcast. Welcome, Lo. I'm so happy you are on Secret Mom Hacks with me today.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We talk about all things mom life on here, and I have been so excited to have this chat with you today because I feel like you and what you do. Now, you were not my IBCLC, but my listeners know about my breastfeeding struggle, and you are an IBCLC. She is the host of the Milk Making Minutes. And if wherever you are in your breastfeeding journey, I highly recommend you go check it out because she has some phenomenal insight and resources that anyone who is, as I learned today, feeding babies human milk needs to know about this journey. So, Lo, tell us a little bit about you and what inspired you down this path.
Okay, so I am an internationally board certified lactation consultant, which is what IBCLC stands for. And it took me a long time to get to the IBCLC status. There are various other lactation certifications, but that's really the gold standard of lactation help and support. And I knew 11 years ago when my son was a little bitty baby that I would become an IBCLC. And I told my own IBCLC that I was going to do it. And it took me a long time. I became a doula first, and I became a CLC, a certified lactation consultant. I became a peer counselor with Breastfeeding USA. I became a certified childbirth educator. And all the while, I was chipping away at the many requirements to sit for the board exam to become an IBCLC. But I did it. And now I'm here, and I got to work as a doula. I got to work as a CLC within those scopes of practice while I was working towards the gold standard. And the reason I told my own IBCLC that many years ago that I was going to become an IBCLC was because I had such a difficult time breastfeeding my first child. I have two. My son is almost 10, so that's why I say 11 years ago, because he was a baby when I was struggling, and my daughter just turned 6. And even looking back on my experience with all of the knowledge and expertise I have now, I really don't know what happened with him. I don't know why it was so hard. I fed him for over 3.5 years. I saw many experts who are very good at what they do, and I was in pain for all 3.5 years, like toe curling pain. And I always tell people that I like to separate what I chose to do as a mom from what I expect from people as a lactation consultant. And whenever anybody is going through a difficult breastfeeding experience, I always like them to look inward and say, what would be best for me given my circumstances? Would it be better for me to change course and make a different plan? Or would it be better to continue down this path? What do I need the most support to do? And for me, even in looking back, I chose to continue going despite the difficulty. And that's what I needed the support to do, despite all of the voices around me who misunderstood. Luckily, I had a partner who understood my difficulties, not fully, because no one can fully understand unless you're going through it, but who understood enough to stand by me and support my choices. Even though I had other voices saying, we just don't get it. Why don't you just feed formula, which I did supplement, but why don't you just, we don't understand why you're suffering unnecessarily. And so, all that to say, I always say people become IBCLCs either because they had a blissful breastfeeding experience that they want everybody else to have, or because they recognize all the barriers that people face while trying to feed their babies. And I am in that second camp. And it has become my life's work to help people, both people feeding their babies and everyone else, to understand the barriers that get in the way of feeding our babies. Because it is not just up to the people feeding babies to remove the barriers. It doesn't work that way. It's going to take cultural and medical shifts to remove those barriers. And so that has become my life's work. And that's what got me here, is through my own experiences.
Wow. Yes, I did not know that part of your story. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Well, as we know through both of our experiences, breastfeeding can be challenging for many new mothers and people who think, because I had this vision of I was just going to pop my daughter on my breast and that is how it works. And and I feel like it's just something so many moms don't talk about for whatever reason. And whether we feel like maybe we're ashamed that our bodies are failing us. And it's like, no, there's all these different things that can come into play. So I love what you're doing. And I'm so happy your profession exists and that someone like you exists because it's not coming from a place of judgment. It's coming from a place of support and just sharing resources.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
what are some common myths or conceptions about breastfeeding that as an IBCLC you frequently encounter and how do you address them?
Well, I think people either come to the experience thinking, I'm just going to do the best I can and we'll just see how it goes. Or they've heard horror stories. And so they already come to the experience with a lot of doubt, wondering whether they are really going to be able to do it. And this is one of those cultural barriers, right? That when we hear so many stories of failure, then we start to wonder if it really is possible for us. And those stories of failure are not connected to the broader picture of why it goes so wrong so often. And so it becomes a story of our bodies failing us, as you mentioned, or just not being able to breastfeed, instead of a story of systemic failures that lead to difficulty breastfeeding. And so people come to it saying, I'm just going to give it a try and see how it goes. And if I can't do it, then I'll switch, which is a totally fine attitude to adopt given the climate that we are feeding our babies in. Or they'll say, I really am not sure because I've heard all these horror stories. Or they'll come to it like, I am going to breastfeed no matter what. It is the most important thing to me. And then when they face struggles, it feels like a punch in the gut because they did prepare so well and they're still not connecting their difficulties to the bigger picture of the systemic failures. And the thing I like to compare this to is cooking. So, Krista, if you grew up cooking with your mom in the kitchen, did you as a little
Yeah, a
girl?
little bit.
Okay.
Yes, a little bit here and there, especially baking.
Okay.
We loved baking.
Yeah. So as a
Yes.
little girl, you baked with your mom?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
Okay. So then when you were out on your own, was it a little easier to bake? Like,
Absolutely.
okay. You kind of felt like
Yes.
you knew how to read a recipe. You knew to mix the dry ingredients first, mix the wet ingredients second, and then
Exactly.
like put them
Yes.
together. My son,
Yes.
who is 9, is just now he's made snickerdoodle cookies twice on his own by reading a
Oh,
recipe.
fun.
I know. And like, he's cooked with us a bit on his own. He's had some interest. And so now he's into like reading a recipe and doing it all on his own. But I'm having to remind him, oh, yeah, you do the dry ingredients separately. Like, do that first and then do the wet ingredients. And hopefully, when he is out on his own in his own apartment, he'll have done it enough times that he's not going to throw the eggs into the wet ingredients, into the dry ingredients before mixing them with the sugar first, right?
Right.
But if you have never cooked, I did not grow up cooking with my mom. There are a few things I made with her, but I really did not grow up cooking with my mom in the kitchen. And so when I became an adult, I'm 42 now, but when I was in my 20s, I one time cooked eggs in Tabasco sauce, thinking it's for the oil, for the grease. And I smoked the entire house out. We all had to leave the house. It is as if I had pepper sprayed our entire house because I just didn't know. I wanted spicy eggs and I thought, why not skip a step and I'll cook them in Tabasco sauce? And it was because I had a big learning curve. And it is the same with breastfeeding. In cultures where there are communities of people where everybody is breastfeeding all the time openly and you attend births as a young child, you're around the birth and you are around the breastfeeding and you see people feeding everywhere. You're up close and watching it. You're actually sleeping with your mother in the bed as she breastfeeds your younger siblings because that's how the family is structured. If you ask people in those cultures about difficulties breastfeeding, they will look at you as if you had two heads and say, what difficulties? Because it is a biological function of being a human. But because so much has gone wrong with breastfeeding and we almost lost it for multiple generations, it becomes so much harder. And you just can't learn it in a book and you can't learn it in a breastfeeding class. And 300 years ago, an IBCLC did not exist, nor was it needed. because you saw breastfeeding from your earliest days. And when it was your turn to figure out how to adjust the baby to not be in pain, you had seen it so many times and you had seen so many positions from your auntie, from your mom, from your big sister, from your cousin, from your auntie's cousin, from your neighbor, that it was not as big of a gap as it is now. And so this is the big misconception, that we can just become adults, become parents, and then learn a lifetime's worth of breastfeeding knowledge in a day when we now have to feed this newborn.
That is impactful. Yes. It's wild.
Yeah. Right.
It is wild.
Right. And so that's why when people feel like their bodies are failing them, I like to help them take a step back and say, no, 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 no. Your body is not failing you. You are trying everything. And there are a lot of systemic structures that get in the way to making baby feeding difficult, like the way that the postpartum care is set up in the hospital. When you get interrupted a million times while you're trying to sleep, for one person to check your blood pressure and another person to come in and check on the baby and another person to come in and fill out your forms and another person to come do the birth certificate and another person to come see if you want to do the circumcision and another person, and it's not coordinated. And so you're stressed out. And then the lactation consultant, if they do exist, can't even get in until the third day. And I do work twice a month in a hospital, so I see this and I'm one of them. And then you're getting pressure to feed the baby right now when human babies, we evolved to take in colostrum for the first multiple days in amounts of like 15 millimeters to 25 millimeters in an entire day. Yet there's this pressure put on parents to feed constantly and have huge volumes right away. But that's just not what human babies do. We're carry mammals. So it's like constant feeding all the time. And then the nurses teach us to swaddle those babies and put them separate when they're meant to be on us and having those feel-good hormones coursing. So there's so much that happens right from the beginning that interferes with good breastfeeding. And then we think it's our fault when it doesn't happen the right way.
So thank goodness for IBCLCs. And to have that perspective, because that perspective is not what I had or what a lot of my friends had or have or would have. So it's so important. And I appreciate now that I have that insight for when I have a friend who is struggling, I can share that with her and then I can point her towards your podcast.
It's so hard when you're in the moment to make the right choices. And I just try to help everybody see you are making the best choice you can given the information at that moment. And that's all you can do.
Now, let's take a quick break. Hey, Secret Mom hackers. Are you a budget-savvy family looking for a financial tool that can help you take control of your spending and savings? Well, I've got something fantastic to share with you. Cube Money. Cube Money is the ultimate budgeting solution that's tailor-made for families who want to manage their money with ease and precision. Here's why our family loves it. It's just like the envelope system we all know, but digitized. Imagine the simplicity of old school envelope budgeting, but with a modern twist. Cube Money digitizes the envelope system, allowing you to allocate funds to specific spending categories right from your smartphone. It's like having a set of virtual envelopes for groceries, entertainment, and more, all in one app. The whole family benefits. Cube Money isn't just for individuals. It's designed to accommodate the needs of your entire family. You can set up sub-accounts for your spouse and kids, helping everyone stay on the same financial page. It's a powerful tool for teaching financial responsibility to your children. Stress-free savings. Planning for the future is a breeze with Cube Money. You can easily allocate funds for savings goals, whether it's a family vacation, a new home, or an emergency fund. It's all about turning your financial dreams into reality. So if you're ready to simplify your family's budgeting, track your spending with precision, and achieve your financial goals, give Cube Money a try. Visit their website at Cube Money to learn more. That's QUBE money.com to learn more and use the discount code SECRETMOMHACKS, all one word, SECRETMOMHACKS, to get 2 months of their premium or family plans for free. Cube Money, on a mission to see you live more and worry less. Try Cube Money today. Now back to the show.
Well, breastfeeding involves significant emotional and physical commitment. How can new moms balance their own self-care and well-being while providing the best nourishment for their babies?
Yeah, it's hard because I don't think there's any easy answer to this because, again, we humans are supposed to be in these large social groups where there are lots of people taking care of each baby. So, if you look at the anthropological studies, when it comes to human milk feeding, we see that typically there were 5 to 12 primary caregivers for every baby. Can you imagine? And now, I
Incredible.
know, and now there's one, the mom. And sometimes a second parent has parental leave for a few weeks, if you're lucky. But still, the primary caregiving falls to one person. And so then how does that one person manage the primary caregiving of a little baby and continue to take care of themselves? It's hard because it's not really what was supposed to happen. And so I say, first of all, just keep that in mind, that if it feels lonely and isolating, it's because that's not how it's always happened. It wasn't one mom in a house by herself with her baby or her multiple children. It was always large communities of people caring for all the children. And so the way we do it now is very different. And if you look at other primates and other carry mammals specifically, that's also how they do it. Have you seen the documentary on Disney Plus, Secrets of the Elephants?
No, but that sounds right up my
Yeah,
alley.
and I bet your daughter would really like it too.
Yes.
So there's this really great clip in Secrets of the Elephants where there's this baby elephant and it's nursing and it goes up to its mom to try to nurse and the mom she's eating. She does not want to deal with her baby elephant and she closes her legs and does not allow access. And the baby tries multiple times and finally it is clear that she is not going to get to nurse right now. Mom is busy. And so the baby elephant wanders off and nurses from a different elephant. And the narrator says that this elephant actually is not even producing milk. The baby is just nursing for comfort. But this is called alloparenting, and this is what humans did historically is we would pass the baby along and there might be a couple of people who fed the baby. It wasn't just one person. And so I encourage you to think about who are the people in my life, not necessarily who will feed my baby, because that's kind of frowned upon culturally, although there's nothing wrong with it if you do want to do that. But who are the people that I can rely on in my life? And if you don't know anybody, I really strongly encourage you to create some family, whether that's an in-person family, because I see a lot of people now going to the online, like the large Facebook groups and asking all of their questions there. And they're saying they're so lonely and they don't have any friends. And I can tell you that some of my closest friends I now have because I was at a park and I was alone and our kids started playing and I walked up to them and I said, "Our kids are playing well. Let me get your phone number and let's connect." And I have done that so many times that I have lots of numbers in my phone, some of whom I have never reconnected with again. But others of them have become my family. I live far away from my family. I don't have a lot of familial support that is in person where I can say, "Can you watch my kids?" But I have two friends that are so close that I know that anytime I need to say, can you come pick up my kids? Or I've got a migraine. I just need to sleep for 2 hours. Will you grab my kids? They will be there. And I will do the same for them. But I tell you what, my kids are almost 10 and 6. And it has only been in the last 2 years that I am finally at this point. And I wish that years ago I had started thinking like this, that I can't do it all by myself. I need people in my life where I can say, I have a dentist appointment. I need you to watch my kids, and I will do the same for you. And so I say the biggest thing you need is other people in your life to help you so that you don't feel alone. And that is regardless of whether you are breastfeeding or feeding in some other way. And sometimes it takes sticking your neck out there and being the person who asks for the phone number.
Which for some people can be uncomfortable. But yes, absolutely. Sticking your neck out and saying, I like how you preface that with our kids are playing well together.
Mm-hmm.
May I have your phone number? Why don't we swap numbers? Because I think so many times it's like, well, kiddos will, it can be hard to find a good playmate for a kiddo sometimes too, depending on everybody's personality. So I love that. Our kiddos are playing well together. Why don't we swap numbers?
Yeah, or if you're breastfeeding, find the in-person support groups, because those support groups turn into way more than just like talking about breastfeeding. You know, it can be so isolating to be the person who's providing the milk for the baby day in and day out. And our partners try to get us, but they just don't always understand. Our parents try to help, but they just don't understand. So getting out and meeting people in person, I think, is the biggest step to feeling like you're human and getting that self care, because then those people are the people who you can call and say, hey, I need some fresh air. I need to get out of the house. Do you want to go on a walk? Or, hey, will you meet me at the mall? We can go on a walk. Or, hey, do you want to go to the park and we can just like push the babies in a swing? Or, hey, let's ask our partners to be with the kids and let's go to Starbucks for like 1 hour. You know, it's like those are the people who you are going to connect with once you stick your neck out there and create those friendships.
So, talking about family and support and all that jazz, what advice can you offer for partners and family members to be effective allies for breastfeeding moms? And or when those, because maybe perhaps some might be listening to this podcast or may hear about it, but a lot of times I think too, they will ask, they genuinely want to help. A family member or a partner may ask, what can I do to help to support you in this? What is the best type of help to ask for in terms of them being a great ally to help us make this happen?
Yeah, that is such a good question. I just had a consultation last Friday and newborn baby, the baby was 4 days old and really struggling with breastfeeding. I show up and the partner is like walking the dog. When I show up, she's like, my husband's outside. He's with the dog. You'll see him. He'll bring you up. So the partner's walking the dog. And then we come up and I go into the bedroom. She's like laying in the bed. She has the baby sleeping next to her. And she like asks him for some water and he's like, okay, I'm going to shut the door and I'm going to vacuum while you guys are doing the consult. And he was like, he's been like this the whole time. He just feels like he needs to do something. So he's been like doing all the vacuuming. He's been washing all the dishes. He's been bringing her all the water. So those practical things to decrease the mental load of the partner and doing it without being asked can go a long way to helping her feel like I can settle in and care for this baby. But then sometimes what I see is the partner wanting to, or the grandparent, or the mother in law, whatever it is, wanting to feed the baby. So many people equate feeding the baby with bonding with the baby. And so then the new mom feels all this pressure to pump in addition to breastfeed so that other people can have milk to bond with the baby. And I really encourage families to stop thinking of baby feeding as the only way to bond with the baby, because there are so many other ways that other people can bond with the baby. Get a carrier and walk that baby around. The partner or the grandparents, they can be in charge of bath time every single time. If mom never has to do a bath, that would be amazing, because if mom is the person who establishes bath time when they're a newborn, they're probably still going to be doing bath time when that kid is 3 and 4, and it becomes a little more of a chore then. But if dad says, you know what? Let me take over bath time. This is going to be my thing. And if you let him do it, let him figure it out, and you don't have a list of rules about how he has to do it and what it needs to look like and how he needs to wash the head, let him figure it out. He's a capable person. If you have married him, he is, or if you have had a child with him and you are still together with him, trust that he can figure it out, even if it's not the same way that you would do it. He can figure out his own way to do it, and let that be his time. Let diaper changing be his time. Let going on a walk be his time, and let them do it without you. And then you can have some time where you drink some tea and scroll on TikTok or watch your favorite show or take a shower that isn't with the baby. Because right now it feels all consuming, like you have to be with your baby 24/7. But in 1 year or 2 years, you're really going to appreciate that the partner or the grandparent has their time. That's the walk time or tummy time or the bath time that does not involve you. And that is the time where you can go off and do your own thing, even if it's just for 20 minutes.
20 minutes is better than 0
Right,
minutes.
exactly. And if that's the time you need to like put a wipe under your armpits and between your legs and then like grab some hot tea, then do that, do the things that you can. But I find what happens is, as moms, and I was like this too, I had to relearn some things in the beginning. We become a little, I'll speak for myself, I became neurotic, and I wanted things to be exactly like I thought they should be. And I took a lot of power away from my partner in the beginning. And I would laugh at the outfits he picked out, and I would question why he was doing things the way he did. And it wasn't until I read a book, and I can't even remember which book it was, but it was about this distribution of household work. And I realized, you know what? The more I do this, the more he's going to back off and just say, you do it then. And there's all these threads and TikTok videos about distribution of household work. And this is still an argument that my husband and I have, distribution of household work. And we are in therapy every other week about this. We've been together a long time and we still discuss this. But many years ago, I had to take responsibility and say, you know what? I have to let go of some of the neuroticism and say, he can establish his own relationships with our children, and he can have his own way of caring for our baby that is not my way. And if I allow him to do that, I will get more time. And that doesn't just apply to husbands. It applies to grandparents too, or the babysitter. We just have to let go a little bit of the control and say, you know what? If we trust this person, then we can trust that even if their way isn't my way, it's going to be okay because they love my baby.
I can completely relate on that. So often, as we were talking earlier, I want to have that hands-on controlling approach. And as I've gotten a little older, don't know what it is, but just realizing, well, first of all, I am not God. I don't have that control. And so my life is going to be much happier if I control what I can,
Mm-hmm.
which is me. I
Mm-hmm.
can control me and my actions and responses, but I cannot control outcomes and other people and how other people react and, what they do or whatever. So yes, I've really tried to just have this open palm approach to things.
It's so hard. But if you are able to give up control about some other things, it means that you can be more assertive when it comes to your breastfeeding relationship. So you are the person who knows the most about breastfeeding. And I know for me, I had to spend a lot of time educating others about milk supply and why it mattered to do things the way I wanted them to do it, because it did not come easy for me to pump milk while I was at work for my baby, for instance. And so I needed people to feed only certain amounts every so often. When I needed them to understand that they couldn't just give a bunch of milk every time the baby cried, because that's not how milk supply worked when I was away from now, if I was with the baby, sure, I would bring that baby to my breast every single time he cried. But I had to do a lot of education of other people about milk supply. But if you're able to kind of let go of control of some other things, then you can stand firm about your ideas about breastfeeding, because you're not holding firm to everything else. So if that is the most important thing to you, then it gives you a little more wiggle room.
And that's where we'll conclude for today. But mark your calendar for next week when we'll pick back up with part 2 of this super fun interview with Lo. I'm very grateful to Lo Nigrosh for making time to speak with me. Don't forget to check out her socials linked in the show notes over at secretmomhacks.com/episode 45. If you're pregnant or nursing or know someone who is, you'll definitely want to follow along for her unique perspective and incredibly helpful tips from childbirth to feeding your baby. I'm curious what your favorite part of our chat was. I hope you're walking away inspired with tips either for yourself or that new mom you know. If that's the case, please subscribe for free if you haven't already. Give me a 5-star rating and leave a review sharing your favorite takeaway so far. Don't forget to stop by secretmomhacks.com where you can find transcripts, resources, and more. Stay tuned for next week's episode, and until then, you've got this, mama.